Well, how does life change after leaving Microsoft?
I think the biggest difference is there is no concept of 9 to 5 anymore.
Especially in this AI era, like in the hype cycle, leaving Microsoft, how tough was that decision?
So I personally like this list. It's called AI agents list, and then they have this like AI agents radar. So this is probably a filtered version of all the tools that are available.
There are more tools to make AI agents than there are existing AI agents. So being in San Francisco for so many years, almost 4 to 5 years, several years, what things make you sad here?
Yeah, thanks a ton, Harnoor. I'm super excited to be here. We're doing the second podcast, so I'm super happy to meet you this time in person, and we're doing this live. So I think I wouldn't really say like anything in particular caused me to do what I'm doing right now. There was a lot of experimentations, but it just so happens that when people as spectators see my life or like see my career journey, they just feel that, oh, like she has done these 10 things right, but then they're not seeing maybe like 100 other things that I've tried and failed, or tried and not pursued. So it has been a lot of experimentation. I had started doing it since my undergrad. like I used to enjoy a lot more like machine learning courses and like AI related courses while I was in my undergrad. And at that point, my college used to not have a lot of these courses. So online platforms became my means to learn. And that is when I started using LinkedIn. I used to love posting about what I'm learning, because since I don't know like how many years, but I have made it a practice that if I want to learn anything, the best way to learn is teach.
Popular saying, if you want to learn something, read about it. If you want to understand something, write about it. If you want to master something, teach it.
So if I know that, hey, like I have to teach somebody about this particular topic, I will make sure that I know everything and anything under the sun about that particular topic. So I started like having this like disciplined habit of writing blogs about topics that I'm learning. So it sort of kept me in a cadence that okay, every week I have to write a blog about these topics. So that is how it started for me.
And you're the OG LinkedIn creator and with the highest reach of any AI influencer on LinkedIn. It's not a small thing.
I wouldn't say that, but I mean, what I would say is that I'm just happy that the community that I've built on LinkedIn is very engaging. I don't care so much about the numbers, but what I care about is that if I'm writing something, how many lives is it impacting? Like how many people are finding it useful? And even if once in a while I get this comment or like get this message from somebody that, hey Aishwarya, like your content has helped me. Now I'm like, doing my masters, or I've like got this job. That's pretty much like what makes my day.
Awesome. So what happened in this hype cycle? You were AI lead at Microsoft for startups that you plan to quit.
Yeah, so my role was actually called Senior AI Advisor. So what I used to do is Microsoft has their VC strategic partners. So Y Combinator and like Alt Capital, Alchemist, New, all of these incubators and VCs that were partners with Microsoft. And I used to be their dedicated one-on-one advisor for anything that they're building on the platform for like AI toolkits. So my primary portfolio was YC startups. So if they're building anything on like OpenAI and they want to migrate that to Azure OpenAI, how do I do this? Like how do I scale my workloads? I used to help them with all of that.
And give funding as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was not funding. It was basically credits. Like Microsoft used to offer them credits, about $150,000, and sometimes some exclusive accounts used to get like $350,000.
Azure credits, right?
Azure credits, yeah.
Amazing.
So it was very interesting. It definitely was very interesting. But then it also made me get introduced to a lot of startups, like doing really amazing things. So few of the very positive things that happened while I was in Microsoft is that one, I got introduced to a ton of other VCs that I did not know before. I got introduced to a ton of new startups that were doing extremely amazing things. I got to invest in a lot of these startups. They are doing like really crazy things, and getting into that like inner circle of the startup ecosystem was very nice. And I think like my very organic next step was to join a startup. So that's what I did. And thanks to Microsoft that they introduced me to like such a beautiful ecosystem. I found a right fit with Fireworks. They are incredible team. I'm not exaggerating, and I'm not saying this because I'm part of the team, but then this is what I evaluated before joining Fireworks, that they are by far the most technical group of startup that I've seen. Like each and every engineer is like absolutely mind blowing.
So from advising startups to then being in a startup, how does life change? First of all, how does life change after leaving Microsoft?
I think the biggest difference is there is no concept of 9 to 5 anymore.
Oh.
You're just always working. And I've spoken about this, like life in big tech versus startup ecosystem before. But then so far, the couple of times that I've worked with startups, I have been in contract positions. I was doing that as a part-time gig. So I didn't really see it as closely as I'm seeing it right now. But I had spoken about this before on like the difference in lifestyle when it comes to like a startup versus big tech. So one of the biggest thing in big tech that I'd seen was everything was top down. Like your manager tells you that hey, our team goals are so and so. They are being told by their managers and their VPs and like whoever are there up in the ladder, and it is always like the top down approach of hey, this is our team goals, this is what we want you to do. So at the end you somewhere feel like a puppet. You're like, okay, I'm doing this because I'm being told that I need to do this. And for somebody like me, I'm very passionate about this space. Like I don't think about my career as, oh, my career is part of my life. To some extent, I feel like this is my life. Even if I don't have a job, like I will still continue to do what I'm doing in the AI space. And sometimes that passion sort of doesn't resonate very well with your team because they want you to do exactly what is being told. They want you to follow a certain path which is devised. There are like hierarchy, there is processes, there is bureaucracy. That is something which doesn't resonate very well with my energy. It's the exact opposite with startups. I mean, sure, like there is no defined working hours or like, there's no like work-life balance which you categorize from like a big tech perspective. But then it doesn't matter to me because I absolutely love what I'm doing. So I don't feel bad that I have to work on a weekend because I absolutely love doing that. So I would rather do that than do anything else on a weekend.
Especially in this AI era, like in the hype cycle, leaving Microsoft, how tough was that decision?
It wasn't very tough. Like, so I'll talk about this a little bit because back in 2022, when there was a lot of layoffs going on, I saw a lot of people like being very disappointed when they got laid off. And it had nothing to do with their performance. It was just a bad market, and like the company had to let go of a few people. So there were a few people who got laid off. But then when I was talking to them, I felt that they had associated their entire worth, like their entire respect, to being employed at a company. So I was talking to this person, and he would tell me that, hey, like if I'm going to any event or like going anywhere, like family, whatever it is, and somebody asked, hey, who are you? And the default thing is like, hey, I'm so and so, software engineer at this company. Your value is so tied to that company that now that you're not employed at that company, you're like, who am I anymore? Like, am I even worth it? And the biggest thing that we like lose sight of in this whole thing is that you are employed at the company because of your skills. Sure, the company is like, you're not employed at the company anymore, but you've not lost the skills. In fact, you've grown your skills. If you worked at a company even for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, you've grown on your skills. So there's nothing that you're losing ideally. Sure, you have to go through like interview cycles, but that's just a process, right? Like there is nothing that you've lost in terms of your self-respect or your dignity or your skill set. So you shouldn't really be feeling bad or depressed or feeling low that like you got fired or something like that. So that is actually something that made me write the book, What's Your Worth? Because I was like, a lot of people have this codependency of their self-worth, of their confidence, all of this with external entities. So I'm like, don't think about yourself as a part of Google's brand or like, Microsoft's brand. You are your brand. you own your skills. No matter where you go, you're going to be valuable. So that was my motivation to like write the book.
Thinking about layoffs, I agree that a lot of people add it to your dignity. मैं यहाँ काम करता हूँ, that is everything for me. My mortgages are decided based on my salary right now, my job right now. Or people forget कि यार layoffs is part of American culture. 40% of US workforce will get laid off at some point. And मैंने LinkedIn post भी की थी, which got almost 1.2 million views. Now, Americans who got laid off 3 times in the career of their at the age of 80, they shared that they got laid off 3 times, shared all the stories, and I was surprised that people were taking that layoffs को सिर्फ एक बार pinch of salt से लो. So even the IBM CEO Thomas Watson refused to lay off or like fire an employee who he spent 600K on. He said कि why would I let someone else take his experience, because your mistakes is your lessons. तो अगर उसने गलती की, I still want to own it because he will not repeat them at this company again.
Exactly.
During your career, like in Microsoft, in AI, you started working on AI since your college and became an advisor for AI. You have worked so closely with AI. Do you think anyone can be an AI engineer? What traits people need to have?
I think the biggest trait is you should have interest in something, because one of the biggest things that people forget, and I hear this question a lot of times, they reach out to me and they're like, hey, I want to build a career in data science. I want to build a career in AI. And my question is why? Why? Is the reason that it's going to be like a high paying job? If that is the only reason that you have, I would highly recommend you not doing this, because the whole point is not to get in. The whole point is you have to stay consistently in the industry, right? You have to constantly see good days, bad days, ugly days. And if you really don't feel deeply about that field and you really don't feel deeply about what you're doing, then you're not going to survive the bad and ugly days. So it's same like marriage, right? Like you only get committed to something if you really can go through that ups and downs with that person. So same is the thing with like a career, right? And sure, you can change your career at any given point in time if you're like not feeling so much about it. And I think that is something that we need to acknowledge, that choose a career path based on your interest. Don't just blindly go behind a career path because it's paid so much or it's like current hype cycle or whatever. None of these superficial reasons. If you want to be an AI engineer, the biggest trait that you need to have is that you're deeply interested in it.
And passion ke alawa, in your podcast also, Reid Hoffman in generally says that passion ke alawa, you need to have unfair advantage as well. And do you think in your career, did you ever felt like, you had unfair advantage to be where you are right now?
I think everybody has that, right? Like maybe not unfair advantage as a terminology, but you have to be at the right place at the right time. So it's a lot of luck has to play its way, right? Like the time when I graduated, it had to be there. Like, okay, these job openings were there. I got the opportunity to be an intern at IBM. That converted into a full-time. I built these connections. So all of these things is not just like hard work and talent. It is a lot of the factor is, are you there at the right time, at the right place? And do you know the right people?
100%. But लोग जो आपको देखते हैं LinkedIn पे, I saw the comments, they think you're the most successful creator and they think you're even more successful when you leave a job. एक perception change हो जाता है ना, oh, you left Microsoft, ये हमसे ऊपर है. Like, you have crossed the barrier. You're not an employee like us. You're above us. What do you think about that?
I do not connect my worth or anybody's worth with the company. All I care about is the work that I'm doing in that company or like the projects that I'm working on. Is that interesting enough for me? I don't care what people perceive about the company. I don't care if you think that the startup I'm working for is not worth it. I love my job. That's all I care about. So I'm never going into a company thinking about the name of the company in the first place. Every time like I was there at IBM, I got the internship. The internship was amazing. I met some great mentors and that's the reason I joined them in a full-time capacity. Through that journey, I had built some amazing network and a director at Google. We were working closely on some projects with Illuminate AI that I was doing, and she was talking about what she's doing in her team, like what her team does in the data science space, which was very exciting. So she just reached out to me and she's like, hey, I'm hiring for this role. Do you want to join? I was like, yeah, sure. I know enough about your team, I know what you're working on, so sure, I'll join that team. And same thing happened, like one of my ex-mentors from IBM, she's still my mentor, but we used to work together at IBM. She was at Microsoft and she was like, hey, you're doing a ton of like advisory for startups outside of your job. You're involved in this Bay Area ecosystem of startups and like VCs. We have this interesting role opened up in Microsoft. Do you want to join? I was like, sure. So it was always the role, it was always the projects that excited me. I didn't care that it was Google or it was Microsoft. Like that brand name never mattered to me.
So in this way, like I want to bring people's attention to San Francisco. San Francisco is so rare in these opportunities. Location gives you unfair advantage.
Absolutely.
So आप बताना, like if because of San Francisco, how your life changed.
I would say it's just the concentration of people who are here, right? You just randomly go to a cafe, you just randomly go to a meetup, you're gonna see at least 10, 20 superstars in that place. It is access to the people that you can call as unfair advantage, because every single day the kind of people that I meet, it is not possible that I would have met them so easily if I was anywhere else in the world. So that is an unfair advantage.
And most importantly, like यहाँ पे जो companies है, they also hire from same city heavily. Like, you know, if the poaching happens, heavily happens in the same city. I see that people here on LinkedIn get opportunities to work. If they're, let's say, working at Apple, Google, Facebook, whatever, they get opportunities in big tech or startups in the same city more than if they were in any other city.
So I'll actually give you the real reason for why that happens. Every time that I have seen people close to me who are trying to hire for their team, their natural instinct is, let me hire somebody that I've worked with. Or like, you know, somebody I know and I trust and they have worked with. So it's always like this network effect that people are trying to go behind. And the advantage of being in a place like Bay Area is if you're well connected, you know, like you have interacted with people, you've done hackathons together, you've done events together, you've done like, you know, something together, then you're always on top of their mind. So for example, if I have to hire for my team, the first instinct is going to be like, okay, whom did I meet recently? Whom did I speak with recently? You know, that recency bias is always there and you're trying to like poach onto that. And it's going to be less likely than, say, a person, I'm just throwing out a random name, let's say in Boston, right? It's less likely that I'm gonna meet somebody who's in Boston. It's like less likely that we're gonna come across as often, less likely that we're gonna work on something together. So it's less likely that I might hire somebody from a different city or like a different state. It is just like the recency bias and like the proximity bias that everybody has. So that's the reason why it seems like, oh, like maybe companies in Bay Area are trying to hire more people living in Bay Area. It's not a company decision, it's more a human decision that, hey, किससे मैंने अभी recently बात किया है, किसको मैं जानता हूँ, किसको मैं जानती हूँ, जिसको मैं अपनी टीम में लेके आ सकती हूँ.
100%. जब आप company छोड़ते हो, you know, people think you're above them. So do you think yourself as successful? What goals you have? What's next?
So, okay, this is a conversation that I always have with my husband, because he feels that I'm never satisfied, and it is true. I'm never satisfied. I never get the feeling that, oh, I'm successful. Because for me, I'm always looking at my next goal. So till I've reached there, I'm like, I'm not successful. I've not reached here. The thing is, by the time I'm closer to that goal, I've already created another goal. So the point of like, hey, am I successful in my own dictionary? I don't think so, because there are like a lot of unmet goals that I have in my dictionary. But from the outside, people might perceive it differently because they're also in a different stage of their life. So that's one of the things that people should understand, that if you're comparing yourself with somebody, try to see if your trajectory has been the same. Is the circumstances that you're coming from is the same as this other person, and the point of like, you know, unfair advantage or whatever, like, you know, the chances of you being in the same position at the same time is going to be very less, right? So I would say like everybody should focus on their own journey. It's good to like look at people as an inspiration. I do that myself. Like I'm always inspired by all of these amazing people, and I'm like, if they are doing so much, what am I doing with my life? And I'm like, I need to do more. So it's that's a good way to like, you know, just take inspiration. But then comparing somewhere doesn't help, in the sense that following somebody else's trajectory is not going to get you there, because in that entire process you're losing sight of what is your strengths. They might have reached there leveraging their strengths, but that might not be the same as your strengths. So you're just playing the wrong cards.
100%. And abhi, your administration has changed in the US.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are negative, positive. Aapko pata hai, there's a phrase called,
Yeah.
when US sneezes, the whole world gets cold. And especially UK is scaring, Canada
Yeah.
is scared. All are scared. The whole world is scared because of tariffs. And it's a US ka bhi loss ho raha hai because US dollar is getting more powerful. I saw Uber's revenue is less in other countries, not because the sales has went down, but because US currency is more powerful. Revenue same in INR, same in other countries.
Yeah.
The value converted to USD is less, so their revenue is also less. It's hurting them as well. But what about us? Hum tech logo ke liye, what do you think our future you think is looking on a positive trajectory for tech people or on a negative trajectory?
So here is my viewpoint, okay? I am actually not a political person at all. I have never followed politics when I was in India. I don't follow it even when I'm here. It is just not, it doesn't fit my brains. But there's obviously some things that I've read about which make sense for me, like, which is related to me. And the way I see it is that the current administration is against the system being used incorrectly. It's more about how do we get rid of illegal immigrants. That's because they want to make sure that the people who are talented, the people who have come here the right way, get recognized. Or, like they have equal opportunities or better opportunities. That's the way I see it. So I feel like tech professionals, you're highly skilled people. So I don't see that there is anything that you need to be worried about, because the problem that they're trying to solve is in a totally different category that you're not going to fit in. And the way I see it is, there are obviously like a lot of things around like climate change and stuff which the administration talks about, which I don't completely agree with. I have different opinions on that, but then what I feel is whatever the government is trying to do, they are very capitalist, right? They are business people. And the way they are looking at is how do we make this country more rich? How do we grow the economy? How do we make people more wealthy in the country? So that's the part that they are going behind. With this psychology, obviously there are a lot of things which gets hurt, right? Which is sort of not fitting in this bucket of like growing economy. There's obviously like things which is more around like mental health and like, just general well-being and stuff which is getting hurt. So it is just part of the parcel, I guess. Like that's what it is. It's the reality that we are in right now. So I would say like until and unless you can change anything about it, take the good parts and see how you can make the good parts work for yourself. And yeah, just roll with it. It is, yeah.
And now, what's your future venture? Can you share more about? So you've joined a startup, Fireworks AI. So what are your plans there? How did you get this opportunity?
Yeah, it's been just a couple of weeks, 3 weeks actually. So it's still very new. So I'm exploring a lot of things, but it's super fascinating because I work with a group of engineers who are probably the smartest group of people that I've ever worked with in like such a small team. We are like 40 people. And the concentration of, the IQ that's there is just tremendous. It's, I have been like, helping them out with a lot of different parts. Like DevRel is what I'm leading majorly.
Developer
relations is what I'm leading majorly. But because it's a small team, it's not very defined. Roles are not very defined. You're wearing multiple hats. I'm doing like part of the product work. I'm helping out with like marketing. I'm helping out with writing blogs, building demos, talking to customers, talking to startups. There's a ton of different things that's going on, but it's super fascinating. It's very interesting on what I'm working on. And yeah, if you don't know about Fireworks, it's an inference engine. And this team is actually created by the creators of PyTorch.
Oh, wow.
So the entire team is ex-Meta, ex-Google. And highly talented people. All of them were like the OG creators of PyTorch, and they know how to optimize the hardware to run AI workloads. So what Fireworks does is, if you want to run any large language model or any generative AI model, at a very, very fast speed and less cost, you run it on Fireworks. So any use cases like text to speech or like, code generation, which requires high, like low latency and high speed, then you can run those workloads on Fireworks AI. And by the way, like a fun fact. So DeepSeek model, like DeepSeek is a Chinese company, a research company, and they launched DeepSeek V3 model in December, and they launched their R1 model recently on 20th of Jan. Funny story is day one, it was on our platform. Wow. Day one of the launch, it was on our platform. Fireworks was the first platform to be running V3 and R1 model. Wow. All the other companies, even like including the big techs, were at least a few weeks behind.
They did after the stock market crash. You did it before it, basically.
Probably, but they have been supporting it since day one, which is a really, really big achievement for like a model as big as 671 billion parameter. Running that day one on the platform is a huge, huge achievement.
Totally. So after DeepSeek R1, what has happened is cost of models has gone almost zero, right? So everyone is talking about building AI agents, and competition may O3, which is still not as good as R1, DeepSeek R1. It's free, it's better. Everyone wants to build AI agents now even more because AI is free. You also talked about building AI agents with Zapier and Gumroad and so many companies. So people here are confused that AI agents to banana hi hai because AI is free, but they're confused how they should build and where. Where is a bigger question now because there are hundreds of platforms to build it.
Yeah.
What do you think about this problem?
So it is depending on your use case, right? Like one, I am a big advocate for open source. I feel like the reason that we are here today is because in 2017, Google decided to open source transformers, right? If that was closed source, I don't think our industry would have come as far as we are here today. So I personally am a huge advocate for open source technology. So I feel with DeepSeek, they have open sourced it, and one of the biggest threats that companies like OpenAI, which are proprietary model providers, are facing is that how do we compete when our models are either not as good or like just marginally better than the open source models? Why would people want to use our models
and
pay like ridiculous amount of money? And not just like ridiculous amount of money, but you're also like being tied with their infrastructure, with their hosting services. With an open source model, you can do whatever you want. You can distill the model, you can tune the model, you can like build like a student model on top of it and like use that for different use cases. You can customize it as you like. That's not the same thing with proprietary models. So वो flexibility आ जाती है with open source models. And with respect to what tools to use, I personally feel there are too many tools out there. It is way too confusing. But the way I look at what is the best platform, okay, let me actually like go back and like help people understand this. So the way the AI agent or like just the AI ecosystem is working right now is that you have all the model providers, which is like the brain of AI, right? OpenAI, DeepSeek, Anthropic, all of these companies are basically the foundations. They are building the AI brain. Now, on top of that, there is second layer, which is platforms, which is like how do you build things for yourself using these toolkits? So things like LangChain or like Crew AI, all of these are platforms. On top of that, there are tools, which are just, you use them. So ChatGPT or Canva or, Midjourney and all of these are basically the application layer, right? Like you just directly consume that product.
Correct.
So if your goal is to build the top part, right? Like you want to build an app that does something using AI, then try to find the right fit for your app in that platform category. Now, things that you might want to do is one, look at integrations. Like Zapier, for example, it integrates with a bunch of tools, let's say like 200 tools, right? You have to assess if those integrations make sense for you. Or the things that you want to integrate with, does that platform support? So that is one part, right? Like, जो तुम्हें करना है, जो तुम्हें उस ऐप से करवाना है, क्या ये platform वो integrations provide करता है कि नहीं? That's one thing. Second part is about ease of use. A lot of people might be coders and they're like, hey, I want to get to the T of coding and I want to customize everything and I want to optimize everything and I want to have control over everything. For those people, there are different platforms.
LangChain is with coders.
Like for coders, right? But for people who are like, hey, I'm not a coder, but I have a great idea and I want to go with it and I want to build the app, go use tools like Gumloop and Zapier, which basically gives you no coding AI tools to do that. Sure, it'll be less customizable and probably more expensive, but then there are those options as well. So I personally like this list. It's called AI Agents List. And then they have this like AI Agents Radar.
So AI agents list.
AI Agents List, and you click on AI Radar.
Uh-huh.
So this is probably a filtered version of all the tools that are available.
Wow, there's so many tools.
There's so many tools, and they have like categorized it in different sections. So it's just easier.
There are more tools to make AI agents than there are existing AI agents.
These are actually some AI, some are like AI agents itself, and some of them are like tools to build AI agents. So it's like a mix of different tools. So these are all like AI agent builders.
Uh-huh.
These are like personal assistants and like finance, design, and stuff like that. So these are all tools which you can use off the bat, and those are like the builders part.
So, okay, so if you had to restart your journey and build an AI agent, what would you build and how would you build?
So this was a wild idea that I had probably 2 days before ChatGPT launched Operator, and I had literally typed this out. So the conversation between me and my husband on WhatsApp is just me throwing in ideas to him and be like, ye bhi karna hai, ye bhi karna hai, ye bhi karna hai. So in that I shared with him that I want to build a tool which basically does things for you. So basically I was sending him an idea, okay, I want an AI tool that is doing things for me. So the whole topic started because मैं मम्मी से बात कर रही थी. My mom was like, अरे ये ग्रुप का ना व्हाट्सएप पे मेरे को बार बार नोटिफिकेशन आता रहता है. तो आई वाज लाइक, मम्मी म्यूट कर दो ना नोटिफिकेशंस. सो शी लाइक, म्यूट कैसे करते हैं? सो देन आई वाज एक्सप्लेनिंग टू हर स्टेप बाय स्टेप कि ऐसे ऐसे करके म्यूट करना है notifications for the group. But I was like, for somebody like her, she doesn't need to learn this. What if there is a like the Siri or like, you know, the Gemini assistant, whatever personal assistant is there on the phone, she could just say that, hey, mute notifications for this chat, and it is able to like, you know, take control of the screen and do that for her. And it doesn't have to be a very domain specific agent. It can do everything on the phone. Like I can say that go click on this email and send me, like, tell me what are the recent 4 emails that I've got, or you know, like remind me about this thing or remind me about that thing, or I can say that, you know, copy the last message that this person has sent and send it to somebody else. So it's like all voice controlled actions that your phone can do for you. That was my idea. I was like, I want to build this tool which can do things for me. And then 2 days later, ChatGPT announced Operator, and I was like, yes, it validates that this idea is good. And second, I was like, okay, there is like different players who are also like, you know, trying.
For example, Perplexity's Android assistant, it's very deeply integrated. आप search करके events को सीधा Google Calendar में डाल देगा. It's very deeply integrated, but not very with WhatsApp, what you want.
Yeah.
So that can already do it, maybe faster than us.
Yeah.
What other thing you can think of? That's a very good idea, actually. But I think these are like, if you think about yourself, because there are so many competitions, you think like, yeah, मैं नहीं बना सकता. So what else would you think for an average engineer growing up?
I feel like if you have to think about ideas, one recommendation that I would have, I'm not like sharing like an idea, but then I'm saying that I was recently advising a bunch of startup folks from Stanford. Stanford has this community called Bases, which is entrepreneurial cell. And I was advising these people, and one of the interesting things that I've seen is everybody who's working on their own AI models or agents or tools, whatever it is, it's coming from a deep expertise that they have in something. Like, for example, if one person was telling me that my mom is a dentist, and they were like, so she has these workflow issues at the clinic. Now she's opened up 2 more clinics, and they have like this integration problem in like scheduling and calls and all of these issues in the dentist operations. So he started building a toolkit that could automate the dentist operations. And the best part is, it is such a niche tool that a ChatGPT cannot come and compete with it, because ChatGPT is a general purpose technology, and this is solving a very niche problem, right? So this can scale as well, because think about how many thousands and millions of like clinics are there
Dentists, yeah.
out there,
So
right?
many.
and it can scale to maybe not just dentists, orthopedicians. It can scale to like orthodontists. It can scale to like different use cases, right? So that is something that I personally like. And Sam Altman has also in his podcast said this several times, that focus on a niche area. And many people have, I think, like the great advisors have said, all I'm doing is repeating their words, is to, like rather have like 100 users who absolutely love your product, and then it's easy for you to like grow, rather than have like a million people like your product. So I think that's the mindset that I would recommend engineers or like people who are trying to build something right now. One, go with a problem that you know deeply about. So it could be something that's related to what your parents have been doing, or somebody in your family has been doing, or something that you've been observing for a long time and you know the inside out of it, and then start building on top of it. That's the recommendation that I would.
So very close to the customer, basically.
Yeah. So I think one of the psychologies that people have is, लोग सोचते हैं अरे AI से solve करना है, अभी सोचते क्या solve करना है. It should be the other way around. Problem क्या है जो तुम solve कर रहे हो? Tool will figure out. Maybe for solving that problem, you don't need a sophisticated AI tool. You could use something very simple, or like, logic-based system, or a very simple, small-sized AI model, right? So reverse your psychology about like, rather than using a tool first and then thinking about what it can solve, think about what is the problem that you're trying to solve first.
Being in San Francisco for several years now, I think 10 or 8 to 10, how many years?
2011 is where, 2021 is when I moved here.
Okay. So being in San Francisco for so many years, almost 4 to 5 years, several years, what things make you sad here? Everyone talks about positive here. So sad parts, बहुत कम लोग ही बात करते हैं.
Sad part?
What makes you sad, angry here?
I think it is a lifestyle choice. For me, I like the fact that I'm always surrounded by people who talk about tech and AI. But I can totally imagine that if you have a lot of interests, it's very hard to like build a community.
Really hard to build a community?
Hard to build a community, because I think not a lot of people have varied interests here. यहाँ पे हर कोई tech में ही है. So like just meeting people with different thoughts, with different backgrounds, that is hard. And sadly, every birthday party, every social event turns into a tech meetup, because we just keep talking about अच्छा किस पे काम कर रहे हो, like अभी ये model निकला, those sort of conversations always come up. So that's one thing that I feel is sad. And yeah, I feel like diversity wise it does make a difference, because if you're not meeting people with diverse backgrounds and diverse interests, your brain's growth is going to stagnate, right? Like you're not experiencing something new. So that is something I used to love about New York. Like I had friends who had nothing to do with tech. They were like, I have friends who were like martial artists and journalists and artists and musicians. So that was fun. Like you get to like learn a lot from people.
Yeah, this reminds me, like my friend from Harvard Business School, he taught me something that कि हमारी psychology होती है just to put all eggs in one basket, just to learn one thing properly. But जब अगर आप कुछ और भी सीखते हो, your field doesn't stay your field, it becomes interdisciplinary fields, and you solve multiple problems. And that's hard to do here, because everything becomes about tech.
Yeah, exactly.
So like he suggested that at least once a year read a book different from your field, so you can mix up some.
Yeah. I mean, that's not something that I am very good at. I still feel like my entire bookshelf is data and the Goliath, or like all AI books. And I just like recently ordered Super Intelligence, because I was like, that book was written 10 years ago. So I'm like, what did people think about AI in 2014? So I was curious, so I got that book. I am not very good at it, so I shouldn't be preaching that people should do all of this, because I myself don't do it. But yeah, I definitely know the value, because thankfully with my husband, he has a lot of interest. So like he pulls me into doing things which are non-tech related, or like, just going and watching sports, or like some movies. And I have said this before, but I'll say it again, that, before meeting him, like, when I was doing things on my own, the amount of productivity that I had, or like the amount of things I could do, was limited. Even though I was spending almost every single hour of my life doing AI related stuff. But because now I'm taking breaks, I go on nice vacations, I disconnect from work, that actually makes me be more creative. Like I started AI comics with Ash. that sort of came from our trip to like Belgium, where we stumbled upon this Tintin museum. And I was like, this is interesting, you know, like बचपन में कभी तो पढ़ा था comic, उसके बाद सिर्फ पढ़ाई की बुक्स ही हाथ लगाई है. But then it sort of like rekindles your creative side, and then you're like, oh, कुछ नया करते हैं, कुछ interesting try करते हैं.
So earlier, when you were at Microsoft, maybe you were biased. You couldn't say your favorite model is any other than OpenAI. But now, since you have left, what would you say is the model who's going to win the race? Do you think open source is going to win the race? Because now, DeepSeek proved that funding is not the moat.
Yeah.
More money doesn't give you advantage anymore. So, do you still think that open source model will win this AI race?
I definitely feel open source is the big thing. I definitely feel like I can't feel more strongly about it. And I feel like now the point is like, it's not about DeepSeek or like, you know, any other particular provider. It just creates a ecosystem where everyone is able to experiment. And the biggest thing is, with open source models, people feel more free to convert their knowledge base. Like all the lawyers, they have a ton of knowledge base. All the doctors, like, you know, all of these different institutions may not want to use a proprietary model because of security reasons and like whatever reasons, right? So having open source gives them a leverage to try out a technology and move ahead in their field.
And improve the model too with open weights, open source.
Exactly. You can improve what you're doing and like, you know, just move the industry further. So, I mean, like by the time this podcast is published, probably there is a different DeepSeek or like, you know, things are moving so fast in the industry. But I definitely feel like open source is going to move the needle.
Any final advice for AI enthusiasts watching, students?
I think the only advice is keep trying, man. Just keep trying different things. There is no better way to learn than try. Just one of the biggest, I think everybody has great ideas, but the only few people who are successful in being entrepreneurs are the ones who try. So if you have an idea and you're like, hey, how do I become the next entrepreneur? The simple answer is try. Just like get to it, like get started.
100%. Thank you so much, Aishwarya, for your time. It was wonderful. Wishing you all the best for your future startup
Thanks,
at Fireworks AI. Thank you.